What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of our MLB DFS DraftKings Picks, this time for Tuesday, August 31st. Last day in August, we have a massive 14-game slate, I believe. I am your host, Justin Bales, as has been the case the last few days, joined by Ben Hostler. Ben, how are you doing on this evening when we're recording it, but we'll pretend like it's the morning of Tuesday?
Yeah, I'm doing good. We crushed yesterday's baseball video. Reached 300 views, which is I think the most for this season for a baseball video, which is great. I think we almost got to 50 likes. I think it was like 46, 47. We were so
So
close.
close, yeah.
So we're almost there. So we did really good in views. We're almost there in terms of likes. Had a lot of comments. So we did really good. So I'm feeling good and I'm ready to talk about this big slate.
Yep, we want to give all of our viewers a big thank you. If you're first time watching us, hope you enjoy everything. If this is your 100th time watching us, Spike, you know I'm talking to you. Thank you again for watching. As always, if you enjoy the content, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel, click the little bell to turn on the notifications. And as always, any questions you have, comments, anything, please leave them in the comments below. Um, I'll give you guys a little hint because it's going to be coming out after this. I will be posting a solo video for something that you probably want to keep our notifications on because it will be time sensitive. I don't want to give out any more information than that. Obviously, sports related, not MLB related. So we'll just see how that goes later in the day. But the video will be posted today, as in Tuesday, August 31st. You can find all of our content at dfskarma.com. That is for the DFS or the fantasy side of things. Obviously, we have a lot going on cap, and we just brought on someone else for season long fantasy football, which they've just been absolutely killing it. Get in our Discord at chatdfs.com. We have a season long fantasy football chat for that. We also have free chats for every sport, including MLB, um, NFL, literally anything you can think of. We have esports going, college football, college basketball, NBA when those start up. Literally everything. Chatdfs.com. It's 100% free. Just go ahead and hop in there. And then our sister site, Bet Karma, is where you can get everything you possibly need for sports betting. I believe that about does all of the intro work. So let's get down to the slate. A lot of options at pitcher. Not a lot that I actually like, though, in terms of specific plays. But I will let you start out here, Ben. Who are you looking at?
Yeah, pretty interesting pitching slate here for the 14 gamer. Only two guys above 10K on DraftKings. That is Walker Buehler and Lance McCullers Jr. Um, we have some other big names there, right? Like Woodruff has obviously been really good this season.
Mhm.
Charlie Morton has pitched very well as well. So there's a lot going on, but they're not really the ceiling type price tags that we are accustomed to. And there's some really interesting mid tier options today as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of decisions to make here. I don't think there's a clear play, kind of like there has been. Like Bueller's obviously been really good for the majority of the season, but the Braves have some strikeouts in that lineup, but it's still a good offense. So it's not like I just want to lock him in. McCullers probably has the best matchup against Seattle of the top guys there. Woodruff, tougher matchup against San Fran, but he's been really good as well. And then obviously Morton, really tough matchup against the Dodgers. So in terms of the top four, it's kind of interesting. I don't know, man. I think I'm actually really interested in some of these mid tier guys, but I think if I'm gonna pick one of the expensive guys, I think it has to be McCullers, just because he has the best matchup. So I'd probably say McCullers number one, Bueller number two, probably Woodruff three, just because Morton is up against the Dodgers. But if you actually look at the last month, Morton is second on the slate with 34% strikeout rate. It's just tough to want to play him in like a cash game against the Dodgers. But for tournaments, I think he's fine.
Yeah, I agree with you. for the most part. I think Walker Buehler would be my number one. And I know that the matchup's obviously worse than McCullers gets, but Walker Buehler has literally been the epitome of consistency. So when you're looking in cash, like, I don't care really that he plays Atlanta. I would rather pay the extra 400, get the complete consistency that Bueller's going to get, and that, you're going to get right around 25 fantasy points, rather than kind of hoping what Lance McCullers does outperforms that. I do think that in cash, if you can get to Bueller and McCullers as your SPs 1 and 2, I think that's a very viable strategy tonight. My thing with Charlie Morton is that his price took a little bit of a dip because obviously it's just a bad matchup. Like, he was up at right around 10K when he started against Miami, dropped down to 9,000 against the Yankees, and now he's at 89 against the Dodgers. And the Dodgers are doing well early on. If anyone saw the video yesterday, I called the lefty on lefty Max Muncy against Drew Smyly home run. He did indeed just home run a little bit ago. So the Dodgers are performing better. But again, it's against Drew Smyly. And when you look at them over the last 14 days, Team WOBA 276, and their strikeout rate is right around 25%. So they're actually one of the worst offenses in the MLB over that span. So I think that I have Charlie Morton as my number one GPP pitcher, whereas I'm probably going with the safety of Buehler and McCullers in cash. I do think that Charlie Morton is more or less an optimal GPP option, just because no one really is going to use him against the Dodgers, and it's just an offense that hasn't really been lighting it on fire in recent games. But we can drop below them. Lucas Giolito, I also think against Pitt, is in a really good spot, and I do really like him. He's been relatively inconsistent for a pitcher as well. But let's drop down below, I guess below Giolito. Who are you looking at more in the mid tier?
Yeah, I really like Giolito in that matchup. Pittsburgh, we've kind of been accustomed to them not striking out a ton for the season, but over the last 2 weeks, 22, just over 22% as a team strikeout rate. Not great, but 15th in baseball. So it's not towards the bottom like it had been for some of the season. And he's been really good over the last month. Like, he's kind of turned things around. So I feel pretty good about him at that price tag. He's going to be up there with McCullers for me. Actually, might prefer him given that matchup, so I'll have to think on that. But I think he's definitely in that conversation. But if we move down to the mid tier, I don't know, man. I've been a big Blake Snell fader for the majority of the season, but he might be back. Last 30 days, 288 Sierra, 37.9% strikeout rate. So he's looked really good. Obviously has a good matchup against Arizona. They're top 10 in strikeout rate over the last 2 weeks as a team. So I think you're going to have to consider him. Scooble, I think for tournaments is fine. He's actually third on this slate in strikeout rate over the last month, 30%. 301 Sierra, really good. Walk rate down at 3%. I don't love or hate the matchup against Oakland for him, but I just think, like, given the price with Snell down there, like, he's going to be GPP only. So I actually think my favorite two, as of right now, walking through this, I think my favorite two pitchers on this slate are Lucas Giolito and Blake Snell at this very moment.
I like the call. You outlined it pretty well. The only thing that I'll say about Snell is that obviously he's playing on the road in a more hitter-friendly stadium, and Arizona is a significantly better offense at home. So adds a little bit more risk, but if you're getting Blake Snell, who's back to form, his recent form has been fantastic for 7,700. I mean, it's just way too cheap. I agree with Scooble. He's someone that I would have outlined. A few more guys that I would add potentially to my pitcher pool, and this is strictly for tournaments. At 8,200, Austin Gomber against Texas. I've been a pretty big advocate of Gomber for basically the entire season, and he's performed really well. So I think that he's in a fine spot that you can take a shot in tournaments. It's just, do you really want to pay 500 extra for him than Blake Snell? The answer is probably not. But then right around Scooble, You have Tyon, who's 100 cheaper, obviously gets the matchup against the Angels. And then if you want to drop all the way down, you have Edward Cabrera, who didn't look great in his first start, but he threw 78 pitches. His strikeout stuff is significantly better than what he displayed against the Nationals. So I do think that there's a little bit of upside. It's just in his first start, he was 5,000. He's now 64. I still think it's viable in tournaments. But realistically, I'm probably looking at paying up for at least one of my two pitchers. And then if I am saving on my second one, it's most likely Snell. But I'll probably try to at least pay up for both of them.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the home road thing because I'm sure the fine people in the YouTube comments will bring this up. So I do want to bring this up because I was talking to Sam about this at length the last couple times Snell started. He's had like really drastic home road splits this season. I don't know why. I don't even know if it's enough of a sample size that I can feel super confident in the numbers, but they're so drastic that you have to at least bake them in. So I'm just going to read you. At home this season, xFIP below 3, 2.9, strikeout rate 35%, 10% walk rate. If we shift that to on the road, xFIP jumps up to almost 5, 24% strikeout rate, and a 16% walk rate. So he's been really, really bad on the road compared to at home. So that's something that we're going to have to, really think on and kind of debate. I will say that the risk of that is baked into his price, right, with him being below 8K for the upside in that matchup. So that does help things, but I don't know, maybe not something I want to risk in cash the more I think about it, but it's something I'll have to think on for the next 20 hours or so, however long it is until lock.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to at least look at that. But more or less in his recent games, I guess most of the good ones, at least anyway, have been basically at home. But he scored 14 and a half against Arizona. That was on the road. The game before that, 43 against Arizona. Then he had 20 against Oakland. His home game or his last road game before that was 28 against Miami. So it's not like he's not doing well on the road right now. I think it probably just has to do with when he was throwing on the road. Just he wasn't in form. Honestly, I think it'll be over. I think it'll be fine for the most part. But I do think it's something that you kind of have to at least take into consideration.
Yeah, I mean, you know how people are with like the splits. Like I'm sure this will be a hot discussion tomorrow.
Well, I mean, honestly, splits are a big part of the game. Some pitchers are just, you get to mess with the mound at home. You don't really on the road, so you're probably more comfortable there. Not to mention, you have the fans on your side and everything. So I believe in home road splits. When you're looking at someone with Snell, if he was 9,500, okay, I would probably be more concerned and probably shy away a little bit. But I don't really care about the home road splits when you look at under 8K for his current form. I'm pretty okay with it.
Yeah. One more guy I want to bring up is Zach Gallen, just because he's also in that same price tier with Snell and Scooble, but people will not want to play him against San Diego. But if you look at the last 2 weeks, San Diego as a team actually has the lowest WRC plus in baseball by a wide margin. It's down at 57. Next closest is Detroit at 68. So you kind of mentioned that on yesterday's video that their offense has kind of been struggling recently. So I think that's another way you could look at another play you could make in tournaments.
Yeah, I would be okay with that. I don't have any issues with that at all. We can move to stacks at this point. It's tough because there's so many good spots for pitchers. I mean, or not pitchers, for stacks on this slate. You have just going to rattle some off either side of the Philly Washington game. It's Matt Moore against Patrick Corbin. I think that both of them make fantastic options. You have the New York Yankees against Jaime Barrea in a very good spot. You can use someone like the Detroit Tigers against Cole Irvin. I have no problems with that. Even if you want to get weird and go something like the Miami Marlins against Trevor Williams, you have Tampa Bay against Garrett Richards is the opener, I believe, and then Martin Perez is coming in. Talk about two terrible pitchers. Boston against Ryan Yarbrough. That's also a very good spot. You even have just weird situations where like there are teams that you do not want to play, but the spots are so good that you have to at least consider them. Those two that I'm talking about, the Chicago Cubs against John Gant. You have the Colorado Rockies against Jordan Lyles. And then, I mean, two of the better offenses in the MLB, the Chicago White Sox and Toronto Blue Jays, take on Bryce Wilson and Keegan Aiken, respectively. It's a lot to go through. And that's basically just taking any pitcher that is more or less decent and taking the stack out, because like you're not going to be scared off of playing like someone like Houston against Isak Kikuchi, right? So I don't know. That probably didn't give you that much information. It just outlined all the best hitting spots. But let's really break down these stacks more. Ben, where are you looking at specifically for like the top stacks on this slate?
Yeah, I mean, it's early night before. I think top three for me that stuck out were Toronto, number one, against Aiken. Definitely just with all the righty power that they have in that lineup. Number two, probably the Yankees against Jaime Barria, someone that historically has been a little bit worse against righties than lefties, which plays well into that Yankees lineup. Even with them bringing in Rizzo and Gallo, I think it's still a good spot for them. And then the White Sox, number three. So three teams that you just talked about. I think that's my favorite three. Obviously, with the 14-game slate, there are other teams that you can stack. Like you mentioned, both sides of the Philly Washington game do seem interesting to me. And then I want to bring up the Mets just because they're up against Edward Cabrera. We've only seen him one time, right? And we kind of discussed in that his first ever start, which was last week, you could consider him just because he was so cheap. Didn't look that good. He gave up 2 home runs. Advanced metrics, obviously, it's a 6 inning sample size here, but don't look very good. 12% walks. So even though the Mets haven't been super hot lately, I do think you can look at them in that matchup.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think when you're looking at more of the chalky teams, Toronto and the Yankees really stick out. I think if right this second I had to pick my favorite stack, it would probably be the White Sox. I just don't think that Bryce Wilson is overly good at the moment. And I do really like that White Sox offense. But I agree, the top three for me as well would be the White Sox, the Toronto Blue Jays, and the New York Yankees. So we're at least on the same page in terms of our top three on the slate. And then, there's a lot of different places that you can go. If there's any stacks you guys want to know about, please, by all means, just ask them in the comments. You can ask just like full team stacks. You can ask players on them, anything you want really. But I guess it's time to move to position by position, unless there's anything you feel we missed at pitcher or stacks.
I think we covered it pretty well.
All right, position by position. I think if you're looking at catcher, I mean, the two higher priced guys, I guess there's three higher priced guys for me that really stick out. One, Yasmani Grandal, he's been absolutely on fire since returning to the lineup. He obviously gets the matchup against Bryce Wilson. He would be my number one spend up. Two, right below him at 100 cheaper, assuming he's in the lineup. I know he just sat out because of his ankle, JT Realmuto. And then three, you drop down to 4,400, and we still have Will Smith, who, if you didn't see, just hit a home run. And he's a bit underpriced. I think if you're spending – sorry. I do think you can use Will Smith. That's not who I was thinking of. I was thinking Gary Sanchez. Their names were literally right next to each other. I was looking at it. I was like, wait, Will Smith plays Charlie Morton, and I don't like that at all. I think Will Smith's fine in tournaments. I don't want to attack Charlie Morton, though. So Gary Sanchez is actually the guy that I was looking for there. Above 4K, I think those are the top three. What are you doing at catcher?
Yeah, I love Grandal for spend up. Like him against right-handed pitching a lot, so I think he's probably my favorite expensive option. If you're saving, it's going to be contingent on lineups, but whoever gets in for Toronto, I think definitely will stick out and probably project pretty well. Even though I said I like Zach Allen a little bit. If Austin Nola's in lineup for the Padres 3K, I do think you could consider him for cheap again as well.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it. I think if Manny Pena is starting for the Milwaukee Brewers against Jose Quintana, who we actually talked about on last night's pod, then he got scratched, cut, and picked up by the Giants and is expected to start tonight. So talk about a crazy 24 hours. But assuming Manny Pena is starting against him, he's only 2,800, and I do think that that's a fine spot for him as well. Moving to first base, I will let you get started here.
Yeah, so if you're spending up, Vlad Jr., I believe he hit 2 yesterday. So obviously against the lefty, that is not great. Terrible Baltimore bullpen. We kind of noted that Toronto was our favorite stack. He's going to be the top option here. If you don't have that much money to spend, I would be moving down more towards the mid tier. I think Ryan Mountcastle's interesting against the lefty. He actually homered off of Robbie Ray yesterday. I think Robbie Ray is obviously better than Hyunjin Ryu. Hasn't been that great compared to what he has been the last few seasons, because there was times the last couple seasons where he just really was never giving up any runs. It was really crazy. But Mountcastle has really big power, and that's kind of what I look for. Anthony Rizzo, who I played yesterday, is still 3,800, and we're going to be interested in the Yankees, so I think you can consider him as well. As far as really cheap options, it's probably Bobby Dalbeck, right? He's 3,100. Yep. He's not going to be high owned because he bats at the bottom of the order. You and I have been on that for quite some time, but Yarbrough is someone that has really struggled over the last month. Like, he hasn't been that good, and the Red Sox obviously have power. So I think Dalbeck's probably my favorite cheap play.
Yep, I really like that. I'll just add a few names that I believe you can put in your player pool. Jose Abreu at 5,000. Josh Bell at 4,400. I think both of them are very solid options. You talked about Rizzo, but Luke Voigt also, he's only 3,400, assuming he's in the lineup, makes a really good play. That's probably about it. I guess Ryan Zimmerman at 3,100, if you don't want to go Dalbeck, also makes a very good option. But moving along to second base, I think if you're spending up, you're probably going Marcus Semien. I also think you can go Brandon Lowe, but I kind of am interested in what Tampa Bay does with him, because he leads off against right-handed pitching, and then he hits later in the lineup against lefties. And Boston's going to open with Garrett Richards, who's obviously a righty, and then bring in Martin Perez for the long relief, who's a lefty. So I would assume he's leading off, but if he's not, I still think he's relatively fine, but I would probably move more towards Semien over Lau in that situation, though. Either one is fine tonight. I think both are really good. I also, up near the top, like Gene Segura a lot against Patrick Corbin. Where are you looking at second base?
I think you covered the top pretty well. I think below 4K, two options I like. DJ LeMahieu is still below 4K, and we're interested in the Yankees, so he's going to be up there for me. And then Cesar Hernandez, if you're playing the White Sox, is 3,500. I would have no issues in if you want to use him as well.
I like both those calls. I'll add two people that are kind of in a weird spot. Whit Merrifield at 4,400. It's just way too cheap for how well he's playing. And then Jorge Polanco at 4,100, also too cheap for how well he's playing. So both of them make very good options. We could move along to third base and keep this train rolling. We finally have Devers against a lefty, so we don't necessarily just have to say that you plug him in immediately. But who are you looking at third base tonight?
Yeah, I think number one play for me is Yohan Moncada. Just over 4K. We always prefer him against right-handed pitching compared to left-handed pitching. We're interested in the White Sox. I like that price point, and I think I can see myself playing him in cash, even though it's pretty early. This is normally the type of spots I like to use him in. If you're not going to use him, Josh Donaldson is still cheap, 3,900 on DraftKings, even though it's righty-righty. It's not like Davies is very good, and he's been chalk for really the whole season, but more so the last month or so. Now that he's been around that 4K mark and below on DraftKings, he's regularly been pretty owned. So I think that's two pretty solid options in the mid tier. Obviously, you can spend up on any of those guys if you want to, but I'll probably be playing the mid tier myself, at least in cash games.
Yeah, I'll add a couple guys if you drop down. Assuming he's in the lineup, Luis Urias against Quintana, I feel like is completely fine for 3,400. And your boy, Rougned Odor at 3,200 is a little too cheap. My favorite play on the entire slate is arguably the hottest player in baseball right now. Jose Ramirez averaging almost 20 fantasy points per game over his last 10. What he's doing right now is just absolutely incredible, and obviously gets a matchup against fly ball pitcher and Mike Minor. So I do think that Jose Ramirez is a great option. It's just 6,200 is a pretty hefty price tag. So um, I think that about does it for third base. That was a decent amount of options that we gave. We can move on to shortstop. I think if you want to spend up at the top, realistically, any of the top 5 are really good options. Xander Bogaerts, Trevor Story, Tim Anderson, assuming he's in the lineup, Bo Bichette, and Wander Franco. I don't think you can go wrong with any of those 5. I also don't think at this very moment I would be able to pick which one my favorite is of the 5. If you really, really made me choose, I would probably say Bo Bichette right now when you factor in price tag. But who else are you looking at, or I guess who do you like at the top of shortstop tonight?
Yeah, all the spend ups I think are in really good spots, right? Xander Bogaerts, we were talking about picking on Yarbrough a little bit, so I'm fine with Xander. Story homered twice yesterday. Briefly mentioned him. He's had really good batted ball profile over the last 2 weeks, which is something I weigh heavily at this point in the season. So I think you can use those guys. And Story's never owned on the road, which just adds to the interest there in tournaments. Outside of the spend ups, I wanted to mention Ahmed Rosario, but he's up to 4,600 on DraftKings. Don't think you need to go there. So I'd probably be dropping down more to the Luis Urias territory. Freddie Galvis against the lefty, I like a lot. I think you can use him. If you don't use Snell, Nick Ahmed's below 3K. He's hit lefties pretty hard. You can use him as a punt as well.
Yeah, 2 more guys that are hurt, but if either of them gets in the lineup, they're both too cheap, both 4,000. Alcides Escobar, he's been playing extremely well, obviously dealing with an injury now, though, but he will get a matchup against Matt Moore. And Willy Adames, just with one of the most ridiculous price tags on the slate at 4,000. Assuming he's in the lineup, I think that he's 100% viable tonight as well. Moving to outfield as we finish up everything. I guess let's set the bar at 5K or higher just to start. Who are you looking at that's 5,000 or more on this slate?
Yeah, I think you have to look at the Yankees guys. Well, Stanton's not above 5K, so you get to look at Judge. Framil Reyes against flyball lefty and Mike Minor, definitely at 5,400 with how he's been playing. And then I would probably say it's between. I mean, JD Martinez at 5K against lefty, I think is probably the third one for me.
Yeah, like that. The 2 that I'll add, and they're basically for tournaments just because of their price tags. They're so high. Bryce Harper and Juan Soto both are left-handed batters that get matchups against bad lefties. So they probably go a bit overlooked because people just generally don't like to play the lefty-lefty thing. But both of them can hit left-handed pitching extremely well, and neither one is a tough matchup. So I do think that both of them make really good options. I think you can play literally anyone that's starting in the outfield for the White Sox against Bryce Wilson. You have all the Toronto bats. I think they're all really good options against Aiken. Austin Meadows sticks out. The only problem is obviously he has to deal with a lefty after Richards comes out of the game, but it's not like it's an overly difficult matchup. Who else are you looking at kind of in the mid tier or for really cheap tonight?
Yeah, below 5K, Toronto guys have to be at the top of your board in that matchup against Aiken. They're all right-handed. Really good matchup, and it doesn't even matter handedness for me just because the bullpen's so bad as well. And then Stanton, too cheap, I think at 4,800. Really good batted ball profile over the last 2 weeks. 49% fly balls, 52% hard hits. I think he's a really good play as well. Dropping down farther, I would probably skip over like the 3K area and just go down and try and find some really cheap guys. I think the Brewers guys are still pretty cheap. Someone like Avisail Garcia, 3,500. I think you could definitely consider. Any of the Baltimore guys I think are fine. I mentioned Mountcastle at for first base, but I do think you could look at some of those Baltimore guys at outfield as well. They have power and they're right-handed, so I think that's fine. And then probably like the Twins guys maybe as well are pretty cheap and have power, so I would probably look at them for cheap. But I don't know, it's gonna be tough. Typically, I spend up for my pitches, right? So I'm looking for these cheap outfielders. But if I play Giolito and Snell or something along those lines, I might actually have money to spend for my bats. So I might be spending up today. I don't know. We'll have to see. Might be a little bit different for me.
Yeah, I mean, you outlined quite a bit. A few guys that I'll add. Andrew McCutchen, I think he's 3,700, is just a little bit too cheap. Miles Straw against Mike Minor at 3,100, assuming he continues to lead off for Cleveland. Also just feels a little bit too cheap. I don't want to go into like, a ridiculous amount of guys for you here. So if there's any outfielders that we didn't say that you believe are really good options, please go ahead and mention them in the comments. We'll get back to you on how much we do or do not like them. I believe we have come to everyone's favorite time, and it's time for some home run calls.
Yeah, I'll go first. I'm going to take Ryan Mountcastle, 46% fly balls, 49% hard hits over the last 14 days. Like him against lefties, and I don't think he'll be high owned. So that's going to be my pick today.
Ryan Mountcastle. I can get behind that. I'm going to stick with, I don't know if you've noticed, but does it not seem like I take a catcher as my home run call
you
every
love
single time?
you love the catcher dong call,
Yes.
definitely.
I'm sticking with it. Yasmani Grandal.
That's a good one. Would love to get him in my lineup. Dodgers are popping off. Corey Seager just homered. Mookie Betts
Yeah,
just homered.
this
They're
is
going
crazy.
crazy. But yeah, that's a good home run call.
All right, so go ahead. Also, you can comment your home run calls below. We absolutely love reading those as well. But that's all we have for you guys. Once again, if you want any of our core plays or anything, please visit dfskarma.com. You can click on the pricing, and you can find all of our stuff there. So good luck tonight. Hopefully everyone does extremely well, and we will see you guys again tomorrow.